Okay, welcome back, mathematicians. So today we're going to do something different for our warm-up. Well, most of you probably have done this in your classes before. It's called a choral count, where we start counting at a certain number and then count by an interval. That means we keep increasing or decreasing based on a certain number. And it might be tricky for us to do it today, since usually a choral count is most effective. It's better when we're counting together as an entire class, but we're going to do our very best. And the noticings that I'm going to be putting on paper are noticings that I'm thinking most first graders will be able to come up with based on the work that a lot of students have done in my class and that I've seen in your classes before too, since I go and visit Mrs. Correa and Mrs. Dusevich a lot in their rooms anyways. So, ready, mathematicians? Today we're going to do a choral count starting at 120, and we're going to keep increasing it by an interval of 20. That means we're going to be skip counting by 20. Our numbers are going to be getting bigger by 20. So the next number after 120 is going to be bigger by 20 integers, 20 numbers, 20 single digits. So are you ready, mathematicians? This is only going to work if you're doing the counting at home with me. And we're going to start slow just so we can warm up our voices. Are you ready? So we're going to start at 120. And we're going to be counting by an interval of 20. Ready? Now, some of you might not be ready to do that just yet because you need to hear how it sounds like. So let's pretend that we are counting the next couple of numbers in our head until we increase the number by 20. Ready? So let's see. So 120. 121, 122, 123, 124, 125, 126, 127, 128, 129, 130. Okay, I increased my number by 10, but if I'm counting and increasing the number by 20, I have to count 10 more after 130. Ready? 131, 132, 133, 134. 135, 136, 137, 138, 139, 100. What is it? 140. Awesome job, mathematicians. So did you see how we did that? So we counted both in our heads and with our hands, and we increased it first by 10, and then we added another 10 together to make 20. And so we were able to find out that if we did this strategy together, we would be able to get from 120 to 140, and therefore make our count bigger by 20. Now, if you need to use that strategy to get to the next number, go ahead. If you think you might be able to use a different strategy to increase our number by 20, do that as well. I'll give you a couple of seconds to think in your head as to what might be the next number in our count. Okay. Okay, 3 more seconds. Ready? Let's see. 120, 140. Thumbs up if you got the next number, mathematicians. 160. Awesome. Thumbs up if you got it. Thumbs up if you were close. Awesome job, mathematicians. So let's keep counting. Ready? Let's go back and get a running start, and let's see if we can keep on counting. 120, 140, 160, 180, 200. Do you think you might be able to go to the next row by yourselves? Do you think we still need to count together? Okay, let's count together. Ready? 220. 220, count together, 240, 260, 280, 300. I am thinking, mathematicians, most of you might be able to look at these numbers and notice some patterns already. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to look at this page and think if you notice any patterns within the numbers in these two rows. Okay? Give you a few seconds to look and think. A few seconds to look and think. Okay, so let's see if you were able to notice some of the same patterns that I did. I'm pretty sure you were. I'm pretty sure you actually were able to notice them a lot quicker than me. Ready? I'm thinking that the first pattern some of you might have noticed is that if you look at the tens place in the first column, the last two digits are a 2 in the tens place, a 0 in the ones place, so altogether a 20 in the last two place values. So that if we go down the column, you'll probably notice a pattern where the numbers were going by 20. Maybe some of you noticed something similar in the next column where if you looked at the last two digits, you noticed there was a 40 going down the column. Some of you might have even noticed that in each column actually there was a similar pattern going on where there was the same two digits going down the column. Over here we see a 60. In this column, if we were to look at the last two digits, you might actually see an 80. And then the last two digits in this column, you would probably see 00. Give me a thumbs up if you noticed those patterns when we were counting. Now, I'm thinking, mathematicians, that if we keep counting and we are able to use the noticings we already have on our paper, our count is just going to get easier and easier. You think it might? Okay, so let's go back, get a running start all the way from the beginning, and let's see if our counting gets better and better. Ready? 120, 140, count with me, 160, 180, 200, 220, 240, 260, 280, 300, count with me, 320, 340, 360, 380, 400, 420, 440, 460, 480, good job, mathematicians, 500. Let's pause our work right there and think if we notice any new patterns. We already noticed these patterns right here, where if we look at the last two digits, we see a pattern where the last two digits stay the same in the column. But let's use our thinking to see if we notice any new patterns. I'll give you a few seconds to look at our numbers and think to yourselves as to whether or not you see any patterns. Three, two, one. Ready, mathematicians? I bet that a lot of you, most of you, probably noticed this pattern where if you look at the hundreds place, it keeps getting bigger by 1, 2, 3, 4 in the hundreds place. Did you see that? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh wait, hold on, mathematicians. That didn't happen in the last column. It actually went from 1, 2, 3, 4 to 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm thinking that if I were to keep counting onto the next row, the next number right here would actually be a 5 in the hundreds place. But let's not forget, mathematicians, that it's actually not going down by 1, 2, 3, 4. It's actually going down by 100, 200, 300, 400. Simply because if we were to decompose those numbers, it would look something like this. So if we were to decompose 120, we would break it apart into 100, 20, and 0. And if we were to decompose 220, we would break it apart into 200, 20, and 0. Same thing for the next two numbers. We would break apart 320 into 300, 20, and 0. And we would break apart 420 into, you guessed it, 400, 20, and 0. So when we say that it's actually going down by 1, 2, 3, 4, we actually mean that it's increasing as we go down by 100, 200, 300, 400. We have to be careful with our language, mathematicians. But did anyone else notice that pattern as you were looking at the numbers in the columns and in the rows? You did? Great! That's some awesome noticing, mathematicians. Now, your job as you keep on counting is to fill up your paper all the way to the last row. And if you notice any more patterns other than the ones that we did together, put those on your paper with a different color marker, maybe with a different color crayon, just like I did, and highlight on your paper what those patterns are, just like how we did together. Do you think you can do that, mathematicians? Great. And don't forget, if this was a little bit tricky to follow, that's okay. Simply because we normally do this choral counting exercise together as a class, and it's a lot easier when we are able to talk to one another about our noticings and engage in each other's thinking. So if it was a little bit tricky for you to do that today, don't worry about it. Just keep on practicing and try to do this exercise in your math journals or in a worksheet today, just to keep your brains thinking about numbers and patterns. Okay? Well, thank you for joining me today. I can't wait to work again with you tomorrow. Bye-bye.